The best way to learn about Fusion is just to go and start designing something simple and see what it does. So we're going to try to walk through how to design something that looks like this, which is a basic phone stand that has a couple little added features and has our name on the front of it. Now, to design things in Fusion, we usually design or we create a two-dimensional drawing or what we call a sketch and then drag that into a third dimension. The simplest way to do that is using something called an extrude. So if I look at this shape and I see how could I draw this in 2 dimensions and move it into a third dimension, if I rotate, and by the way, if you forgot to navigate in Fusion, we use our mouse a lot. So the middle mouse button, if you scroll it, it zooms you in and zooms you out. If you right click, it'll let you rotate in a 3-dimensional space. And if you click the middle mouse button, you can slide around in a 3-dimensional space. So if I rotate and look at this from the side, it looks like kind of a backwards L. And if I rotate it just right, the third dimension I can't even see. So really this is this kind of 2-dimensional shape, then dragged in a straight line into a third dimension, and we call that an extrude. So we're going to try to create a shape that looks something like this, and then drag it into a third dimension to make our 3-dimensional shape. So I'm going to go into an empty model. So if you start Fusion, this is usually where you're popped into, is an empty, untitled object or design. So again, we're going to start by creating a sketch. Now it looks like we're kind of empty in here, but as we see when I click the sketch button, so up here, these are our kind of options. Right now we're in the solid menu, which lets us create solid things. But I'm going to start by creating a sketch. I'm going to go up here, click create sketch. And if you notice, the top menu is going to change in a second. So first it asks me where do I want to place this sketch. Now, if you notice too, some stuff showed up in here. This is our origin. These are the three 3-dimensional planes we exist in. So we have this one, we have this one, and we have this one. There's also 3 axes in here, and this defines our 3-dimensional shape. Since nothing is here yet, we have to draw on one of these. Now I'm going to draw on this side one here. So I'm just going to click on that. If you notice, my screen rotated. Now I can right click and rotate back out of that. Now if you ever get lost where you're sketching and you rotate it by mistake and you want to get back to that, to looking straight where your sketch is, if you go over here, you might have noticed that now that I picked the plane, this sketch palette showed up over here. Also, our menu options have changed on the top. But if I go where it says look at and click this button here, it'll snap me back to my sketch plane. Now we're going to start just by drawing a rectangle. So I'm going to go up here to my options, and under the group here that says create, there are some shapes I can draw. If I click create, there's also other options. So I just want to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to click create, select a 2-point rectangle here. And then now I can draw this rectangle anywhere. I want to draw it starting right from my origin though. This little kind of weird circle looking thing down here. So as I get close, you might notice my cursor jumps and sticks to things. So I'm going to let it stick to the middle. I'm going to click, drag it to the top right. And now if you notice, as I drag it around, there's dimensions that tell me how big this rectangle is. And they change as I move it. And I can also, one of them is highlighted, I can type in how big I want these dimensions to be. Now I measured my phone. For my phone, I want the bottom one to be 40. So I'm just going to type in 40, and we're working in millimeters. And then I can hit the tab button and jump to the other dimension. And I'm going to type in 30 for this one. And then hit enter. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it. So there's a base rectangle. Now I want to draw the slot into here. So I'm going to start by just drawing some lines. Then we're going to move them around and give them dimensions so that they're exactly the size you want. Now I'm going to go back up here to the top, and I'm going to click this button, which is the line button. Again, these are like some shortcut ones that you use a lot, but if you ever are trying to do something that you don't see here, just hit create and the other options are there. Again, line also shows up there. So I'm going to draw a line. And if you notice, I want it to go right from the top down into my rectangle a little bit. And if you notice, as I get close to this, see how it kind of jumps and sticks to it, and there's that blue X. That means it's sticking to the edge of that shape I already drew. And if I move it right to the middle and get really close, it sticks right to the middle, and a triangle shows up. And that triangle means it's sticking to the midpoint. So if I kind of move close there and click here, that line is drawn right in the middle of this top line. Now as I drag it down, you also notice that a little blue square shows up. That means perpendicular, so it's going straight down. And as I move this, a dimension shows up, which tells me how big the line is. Now I can also type in how big I want it to be. I want mine to be 20. So I'll type in 20 and then hit enter. And my line is there. And if you also notice, I'm going to click and just drag this here just so it's out of the way. My line is black, which means it's what we call fully constrained, which is it's completely set in place and I can't move it anywhere because of my dimensions and constraints on it. So I told the machine how long it was. I also said I wanted it to be perpendicular to this line. That's what this little T means. At least, well, the computer guessed I wanted to do that. And this triangle showed up saying I wanted this line to start from the middle of this line. So with those two constraints and that dimension, this line is completely fixed in space. Now I realize if I go back to my original drawing, I don't want that to be vertical. If I look at this from the side, it's slanted back a little bit so my phone doesn't tip over. So I actually don't want this to be perpendicular. I want it to be at an angle, so I'm going to go up, mouse over that T, click on it, and then hit delete. And I'm going to remove that perpendicular constraint because the computer guessed I wanted it, but I really didn't. And now you might also notice that my line turned blue, which means that it's no longer fully constrained. I could grab the bottom and I could kind of wiggle it around. It's still stuck to the top, but it's no longer perpendicular, so it's not fully constrained. So I need to give it another constraint or some type of dimension to fix it in place. So I'm going to give it a dimension. I'm going to click the dimension button here. I could also hit the letter D. That's the shortcut for that. And I'm going to say I could tell it how long I want it to be. So if I click on this line, if I click on that line, I could tell it how far from the top I want it. Now that would define it, but that's kind of a weird dimension. What I want to do is I want to tell it what angle it is from this line here. So I'm just going to also click on this line here, and it switches from the length to this dimension or to this angle dimension. Now I'm just going to click here, and now that's some crazy number. I want to make it a little bit cleaner, so I'm just going to type in 100, which is 90, which is a 10 degrees more. I could also type in, if I didn't want to add it in my head, I could do 90 plus 10, and it will do the math for me, and I hit enter, and it makes it exactly 100 degrees. So it's tilted back 10 degrees, so my phone won't tip over forward. It's leaned back a little bit. So that's nice. Now I want to draw something that represents how wide I want this slot to be. Now for my phone, that's 13 millimeters. I'm going to draw another line. Go up here, click. I can click L, or I'll just click the line tool. Now I'm just going to draw it in space so I can show you how to constrain it. I'm going to draw it here. I'm going to type in 13 because I know I want it to be 13 wide and hit enter. Now, right now I can just drag this anywhere. I can kind of move it around, but I want to fix it to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the constraints up here to fix it in place. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to use the midpoint constraint. So I'm going to click on midpoint. So these are all the different constraints we can add. I'll click midpoint. I'm going to click on, now I already had that selected, so it's already highlighted. If I didn't, it would just be like a thin line. So I want to do the midpoint of this to this point right here. And it jumps that line over there. Now I can still rotate it, but now it's stuck to there. I also want to make this perpendicular to that. So I'm going to go back up here, click the perpendicular constraint, and I want this to be perpendicular to that. So I'm just clicking each of those, and now it snaps it perpendicular, and now it's fixed in place. All right, let's move this out of the way, and I'm going to draw two lines coming up. So I'm going to draw another line. Let's draw a line from here up to there, from there up to there. Now I'm just drawing him, but I am letting him stick to the top up there. Now these lines aren't straight, so there's another constraint I can use called the parallel constraint. I'm going to click on that, and I want this line to be parallel to that, and this line to also be parallel to that, and it just makes them straight up and down. And now everything is black. Now I'm going to do a couple little things to make this a little bit cleaner. Now this middle line I don't really care about that much. I use it to guide where the other lines are, but I don't want to delete it. So what I can do is I'm going to select, actually go back and hit select it. And over here, there's a line type, and I can make it what we call a construction line. It's kind of like a guideline. I'll click that. It just makes it dash, so it means it's not really part of my drawing to create a shape, but it's there to help me guide what the other lines are doing. All right, so that looks pretty good so far. Now I have one little issue that right now this is dead center in this block, and my phone is tilted backwards. So I'd rather have more material in the back of this so that it's a little more stable and doesn't tip over. But right now this is fixed because this midpoint to the center of this. So I'm going to change that. So I'm going to first click on my triangle and delete it. And you notice my shape turns blue because it's no longer fully constrained. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new dimension. So I'm going to hit, this time I'll hit the D button. I could also click that. And I want to add a dimension from this dot, or from the end of this line, of my construction line, to this edge over here. And I'll click somewhere. And instead of being in the middle, which is at 20, I'm going to put it at say, let's say 16, a little bit closer to the front. And if you notice, the whole entire thing moved because remember, these lines and these are all based on that construction line. So now if I move the construction line around, everything else moves with it. Now everything is not black, which I said it was good to make them black so they're fully constrained. That's because this line is no longer on the midpoint of this line. It's kind of floating in the air. So I have to add one more constraint. I'm going to add what we call a coincident constraint. So I'll click on this button. I'm going to say I want this point to be coincident, which means on this line right here. And now everything is fixed in place. Now I really like that. And what's nice is if I wanted to resize things, and maybe I wanted to go a little bit deeper, I could click this 20. Go back to select. Click this 20 and make it like 24, let's say. And it makes my slot deeper. Let's go back to 20. Or if I had a different phone that was thicker, I had a new phone case, let's say, that was thicker, I could click on this 13 and make it 15 and make that thicker. So this is nice because everything is editable and it'll update my whole drawing without me having to redraw the whole thing again. So I'm happy with this sketch right now. Everything is fully constrained. I'm going to hit Finish Sketch. Let's go back. This little home button will spin me back to my regular kind of angly view. And now I want to drag it into 3 dimensions. I do that just by going up here. You might notice that our top menu changed back to solid again. I'm going to click the Extrude button. I'm just going to select my shape. It turns blue, and now there's a little arrow. I can just drag it. And if you notice I drag it, the amount that I drag it changes. I can just also type in, my phone, it's about 60. Works good for my phone, I measured it. So I can type it in there and that works great. Now there are other ways you can extrude. If you notice over here in the extrude kind of little panel that pops up, it says direction one side and then distance. So if I was to put, say, for example, symmetric, it would do 60 on each side. Now that's a little bit annoying because I want it to be 60 wide, but I maybe want it to be centered just so it's a little bit cleaner. If you notice too, under measurement, there are 2 different options. Right now it's set to the half length, so it's going to take whatever number you type in and do that on each side. I want the total length to be 60, so if I click this one instead, it does the total length, but it does half on one side and half on the other side. So that's what I'm going to select, and this is going to default to new body because it's going to create something new, so I'll hit OK. And there's my start. So this actually would work fine, but I noticed when I designed this lip in front was a little bit high. When I put my phone in there, it was blocking kind of part of the screen. So I want to remove some of this. Now I could go back into my sketch and remove a piece of it, but we're going to do it a different way. So I'm going to create a new sketch. And this time, instead of picking one of the planes, I'm going to click the front of my shape I just made. I'll select that. I'll come in here and I'm actually going to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to go create rectangle, 2-point rectangle. And I'm going to click to the top here. And I'm going to drag it down, let it click to the other side. And just put it at some dimension up and down because we're going to set that in a second. There's my rectangle. 3 sides are black because they're on my shape, but this blue line here is not because it needs a dimension. So I'll hit D again. I'm going to dimension how big this side is. And let's make it, I don't know, 14 for now. So we'll make it 14. I'm also going to add my text at this point. So I'm going to go up here and go to create. And this time I'm going to do create text. Again, it wants me to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to click the bottom. And I'm going to click to this spot here because I'm going to use this shape on top to align my text. So I'll click that. I can then type in my text. So I'm going to just type in my fake company name here. It's a little bit big, so let's resize it. Let's make it to like 7, let's say. Still a little big. Let's go down to 6. Now, again, you can use whatever fonts you want. Let's maybe use Arial Black, which means it's still too big. Let's make it down to 5. That looks good. And also right now it's on to the left, so I'm going to center it and center it up and down. That looks good to me. I'll hit OK. Fine with that. I'll finish my sketch. Go back to our view. And now I want to use this to remove stuff and then use the same sketch to add some stuff here. So I'm going to click extrude again. Click my top box here. Now I could just drag this and drag it enough. And you've noticed, see how it turns red and it defaulted to the operation being cut. Because I'm going through material that's already there, it's guessing I want to remove material. That's what cutting does. But I don't want to remove material. I do want to remove material, so that's fine. Now I could just drag it back enough where it goes through what I want. The problem is if I was to move things, this could eventually maybe cut into the wrong spot. So there's another option. I'm going to rotate this a little bit. Instead of using distance for extent type, that's how far the cut goes here, I'm going to do to object. I'm just going to click on the back of this. And so it's going to move it back until it gets to this, and then it's going to stop cutting. So now if I was to resize things or change stuff, it's going to automatically redo my, my cut operation. And I'll hit OK. And that piece gets cut off, so that's nice. I got a nice little lip on the front now, so it's not going to block my screen. I got a bigger lip on the back, so my phone doesn't tip over. But if you noticed, my sketch disappeared. So that happens when you use a sketch for something. It thinks you're done with it, so it automatically turns it off. It still exists, it's just hidden. So if we go over to the model here, and where it says sketches, if I drop this down, you notice it says sketch 1 and sketch 2. Well, this is the one I drew for the side. There is my front one. I can just show it again. And there's my letters. So I'm going to do another extrusion. This time I'm going to select just the text that I put in there. And now I want to go into this model a little bit. I only want to go in a little bit, so I'm going to type -0.2. If you notice it goes in a tiny little bit, it also defaults to cut because you're going into stuff. I'll hit OK. If you notice, if I zoom in here, there's a little teeny tiny cutout in the front. Now you can go a little bit deeper if you wanted to, but that's fine for us. But now this time, because I turned the sketch back on, it doesn't auto turn it off. So let's just go back and hide it again. And now we can really see that little indentation. Now we're almost done with this. We just want to make it look a little bit pretty. So what I'm going to do is, these are really sharp edges. And usually it's nice when you create your models to round your edges off a little bit. It just makes it look a little bit cleaner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit up in the top here under the modify part. One of the tools is called a fillet. So I'm going to click on that. And this lets me round the edges of things. So I want to round, let's see, I want to round the three to the side. So I can keep clicking on things. Notice there's a little arrow, but if I keep clicking, I can select multiple things. I want to round those. I want to round the whole top and these corners. I don't want to round this part because that's where my phone lays on. So I want to round everything else though. And now I can grab this arrow and just kind of pull it a little bit. If you notice, it's going to round off the edges. So you can do this by what you think looks good. You can also type in a value. I'm going to use 2 millimeters. That's the radius of that round. And I'll hit OK. And my part is done. So I have my nice little phone stand. And what's really nice is if I got a different phone, this is all done. I can go back to my original sketch, for example. And if I wanted to move this farther back, I can click on that. Let's say move it back to 22. And maybe I want to go a little bit deeper. Let's go to 20, I don't know, 22 deep as well. And when I hit finish sketch, it's going to go back and it recreated everything else. I didn't need to go back and redo the rounds. I didn't need to go back and redo my cuts. It updated everything based on me changing that original sketch. So there you go. There's your simple phone stand that you can now 3D print on one of our 3D printers.